We're your shortcut to getting informed, taking big topics, looking at the sources, and pulling out those key insights for you.
That's the goal.
And today, we're jumping right into a really, really tense moment. It's an exchange between former President Donald Trump and ABC News correspondent Jonathan Karl.
Yeah, quite a face-off.
So our mission here is to unpack this specific interaction. We want to peel back the layers, look at what was actually said, and really try to understand the different viewpoints. It's all about free speech, media criticism, the press. It got very heated.
Definitely. And the implications are pretty significant.
We think you'll have some aha moments here. It's got legs, this one.
For sure.
Okay, so let's set the scene. How did this whole thing ignite? It really kicked off when Jonathan Karl questioned Donald Trump directly.
Right, and it wasn't out of the blue.
No, exactly. It was tied to comments from Attorney General Pam Bondi. She'd just gone public saying she'd crack down on, quote, hate speech. This was following the terrible murder of Charlie Kirk.
A really tragic event. Kirk was a student killed in a shooting, and it sparked a lot of national conversation about hate, extremism.
Understandably. So Bondi's comments were, part of that larger public response.
Makes sense.
But Karl's question got really specific. He didn't just ask about Bondi's general idea. He pushed a bit.
How so?
He followed up by saying, and this is key, a lot of people, a lot of your allies say hate speech is free speech.
Okay, so drawing that line in the sand immediately.
Right. That phrase instantly framed the core tension, didn't it? This whole debate, which is always simmering, about free speech versus dangerous speech. It just put it right there, front and center.
Yeah, what's fascinating there is how Karl just forces the definition issue right away. When he says a lot of your allies, he's pointing out that for many, maybe especially on one side of the aisle, calling something hate speech is automatically seen as a threat to free expression.
Because the U.S. has such broad protections.
Exactly. I mean, our legal framework for free speech is incredibly broad. It protects a lot of stuff people find offensive, even hateful. The Supreme Court's been pretty consistent. You can really only restrict speech if it falls into really narrow buckets, like, direct incitement to violence, real threats, defamation.
Not just because someone calls it hate speech.
Right. Just using the label hate speech in a casual way doesn't automatically strip it of First Amendment protection. So Karl's question, it kind of sets up this battleground over definitions right from the get-go, even before Trump says anything. It's quite strategic, really. Defines the terms.
And Trump definitely defined things, but maybe not how Karl expected. His reaction was, well, pure deflection, wasn't it?
It seemed that way.
Instead of talking about Bondi's policy or the tricky legal bits of hate speech, he just flipped it. Turned the whole thing right back onto Jonathan Karl himself.
A personal attack.
A very personal attack. He didn't just disagree, he kind of lunged.
What were the exact words again?
He said, let me get this right. She'd probably go after people like you. Because you treat me so unfairly, it's hate. You have a lot of hate in your heart.
Wow.
Yeah, just like that. Swift, personal, total redirection. What do you make of that immediate jump from policy to accusing the journalist?
Well, if you look at it in terms of, political communication strategy, it's more than just dodging the question. It's almost like rhetorical jujitsu.
Jujitsu, how so?
He takes the word hate, which Karl brought up regarding Bondi's plan, and he throws it right back at Karl. It's not just about avoiding the policy talk. It feels like an attempt to completely discredit Karl, the messenger.
By saying he's the one with hate.
Exactly. Accusing Karl of having hate in his heart, treating him unfairly. It does two things at once. It tries to undermine Karl's journalism, right? And it reframes the media itself as being the source of this hate that Bondi was supposedly going after.
So it muddies the waters.
Totally muddies the waters. It kind of forces the press onto the defensive, making them argue about their own fairness instead of keeping the focus on the original topic, the policy, or what hate speech laws might actually mean. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? How often do we see accusations like hate or unfairness used in public debates, maybe not to actually engage with the point, but just to shift the conversation or, shut down criticism?
It's a really sharp point, weaponizing the terms themselves. But, couldn't you argue that any public figure has a right to push back against media they think is biased, to criticize unfair coverage?
Oh, absolutely.
How do we balance that right to criticize with this worry that maybe these strong attacks are just meant to discredit, not really inform?
Yeah, that's the tightrope, isn't it? Of course, public figures can and should criticize the media. It's actually healthy for democracy, that back and forth. But I think the way they criticize matters. When it shifts from pointing out factual errors or maybe bad methods to just broad accusations of hate or, like we'll see in a minute, suggesting government should step in, that crosses a line for a lot of people.
So it's about the nature of the criticism.
Exactly. And maybe the intent behind it. Is it really about making journalism better? Or is it about chipping away at public trust in the press so it can't do its job as, like, a watchdog? The language, the context, it all plays a role in figuring that out.
Okay, so Karl, he actually didn't let it go there, even after the personal shot. He pressed Trump. He asked him straight up, would that be appropriate?
Meaning appropriate for Bondi to investigate journalists like him.
Yes, exactly. And that's when Trump, well, he didn't just stick to attacking Karl. He took it further.
He broadened it.
Yeah, he suggested Bondi's crackdown could maybe hit ABC, Karl's entire network. And this quote really made waves. Trump said, maybe they'll come after ABC. Then he adds, well, ABC paid me $16 million recently for a form of hate speech, right? Your company paid me $16 million for a form of hate speech, so maybe they'll have to go after you.
Okay, that's quite something. Referencing the network directly and bringing up money.
Right. So what's the real weight behind that? Mentioning ABC, the $16 million, and maybe just clarify for everyone listening, DOJ means the Department of Justice.
Yes, the federal law enforcement agency. And that statement mentioning ABC and the money, it's incredibly loaded. It rings several alarm bells, really.
Okay, like what?
Well, first, it's a pretty explicit hint at government action against a media company. When a former president, or really any powerful political figure, suggests the DOJ, the Department of Justice, might come after a news outlet for something they label hate speech, that goes right at the core of free press protections as we usually understand them.
It sounds like a threat.
It certainly sounds like it could be interpreted that way. The idea of the DOJ investigating news content, especially under a vague term like hate speech, it just raises fears of using government power to silence critical reporting.
Okay, that's the first alarm bell. What else?
The second is bringing up that $16 million payment. Now, that probably relates to some kind of business deal, right? Licensing fees, maybe content rights.
Sure, some commercial arrangement.
But he frames that transaction as a form of hate speech. It feels like a tactic to paint the network as hypocritical, suggesting their own business dealings are somehow tainted by hate speech while they report on it.
Trying to undermine their credibility that way.
Exactly. And more broadly, the implication is, well, it's a reminder of how powerful people can use financial links or past grievances to maybe create a chilling effect. It subtly hints there could be consequences for critical coverage.
Making journalists maybe think twice.
Potentially. Making them or their bosses second-guess reporting, not because it's wrong, but because it might provoke a powerful backlash. And that's very different from just healthy criticism. It starts to feel more like potential intimidation.
Yeah.
It blurs that line between political talk and a perceived threat to journalism itself.
The chilling effect you mentioned.
Yeah.
Still, playing devil's advocate for a second.
Sure.
Couldn't someone argue, look, he's a public figure, he felt attacked, he's just hitting back hard, calling out what he sees as bias, even if it's provocative language. Where do you personally see the line between strong media critique and something that actually threatens press freedom?
It's such a tricky line, and honestly, it feels like it's constantly being debated and maybe even moved in our public discourse today.
Yeah.
But I think for me, the key difference is about the consequences being suggested. Criticizing reporting, fine. Pointing out bias, okay. Arguing about fairness, part of the deal. But when the criticism starts suggesting government action...
Like the DOJ getting involved.
Right. Or hinting that their content should somehow be legally shut down, that's a different ballgame entirely. That's where you really start bumping up against the core principles of a free press. The press needs to operate without fearing government punishment just because someone in Parry doesn't like what they're reporting.
A First Amendment protection from government interference.
Exactly. It protects speech, yes, but it also specifically protects the press from the government trying to censor or punish them based on their viewpoint. That difference is, well, it's everything.
Okay, so where does this leave? I mean, the public watching this unfold, this exchange definitely didn't happen in a vacuum. The reaction was fast, it was loud.
Very visible pushback.
Yeah, you saw figures like California Governor Gavin Newsom posting on social media, pretty blunt. Donald Trump says he will send the DOJ after the press if they say things he doesn't like. Clearly, this hit a nerve. Why do you think this particular back and forth resonated so much?
I think it resonated because it just perfectly captures so many raw nerves in our society right now, all at once. Well, first, there's the whole struggle over defining hate speech.
Mm.
It's a term that carries huge social weight, but legally in the U.S., it has a very specific, very limited meaning.
We talked about that.
Then there's the constant debate about free speech itself.
Mm.
How far does it really go, especially now, with social media and everything being so polarized?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the biggest one here, it throws a harsh spotlight on the press. Its vital role, yes, but also how vulnerable it can feel and how necessary its protections are in a democracy.
So it's like a perfect storm of sensitive issues.
Exactly.
Mm.
And this one interaction just shows the high stakes when these big principles collide. It wasn't just, political sparring. It felt like a real clash over fundamental rights and roles. For a lot of people, hearing a former president even suggest the DOJ could go after the press, it brings up bad historical echoes, leaders trying to silence media.
It sounds alarming, regardless of your politics.
Right. It goes beyond just partisan disagreement.
Yeah.
It touches the very foundation of press independence, the media's ability to hold power accountable without fear. And that kind of rhetoric, whether he literally meant it as a threat or not, it kind of erodes trust in government, trust in the press. It feeds into this environment where even basic facts get disputed, where objective reporting itself is questioned.
Yeah.
It forces us all, listening to this, to think really hard. Okay, where are the lines? Who gets to decide where they are? And what happens down the road if those lines keep getting blurred? How do we stay informed citizens?
So wrapping up this deep dive, it's really striking how fast a conversation that started about policy, about dealing with hate speech, could just spiral into personal attacks and then into these huge questions about the press's freedom and its whole role.
It escalated quickly.
Yeah. We've touched on how slippery that term hate speech can be. The endless arguments about free speech limits and that really critical, sometimes explosive relationship between politicians and the media. This wasn't just a one-off blow-up. It's kind of a snapshot of the challenges that the press, and frankly all of us, face in this super polarized time.
A vivid snapshot, for sure.
So we've seen that pivot from policy to personal attacks to questioning the press itself. What do you think this means for how we, the public, should maybe listen to these kinds of discussions moving forward? Discussions about free speech, about media criticism. How might you think about them differently now, having sort of unpacked all these layers?
It definitely encourages more critical listening, doesn't it?
Something to chew on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep digging into the information shaping our world.